I'm Vince B.
I'm David A. Price.
And I'm Queequeg.
You're not Queequeg. What's wrong with you? You're Jason Wood.
That's true, I am. And you're listening to
Southern Fried Geekery. Yeah.
Woohoo!
So everybody laugh quieter.
Laugh quieter. Like, cut the joy out of the entire podcast. This is serial business, okay? Super serial.
You realize that's in character for me to.
I know.
I would actually be like, if we could all just be not happy.
I've been waiting for it to make that audible in this game.
Everybody practice your inside laugh.
Chortle.
If we could just cut out jokes in general and in all enjoyment, just talk seriously about comic books for once.
Yeah, you need to work on your monotone really well.
I'll go straight monotone from now on, Jerry.
We should see how long we can keep that up for the episode.
I can't. I'm making eye contact.
Everybody reviews the outline. They'll see laughter is not pointed out anywhere.
LOL.
Insert laugh.
Some of you might find this funny. Not me.
We're just getting it out now, Caleb, before we start recording.
That's fine. I like it.
Oh my god,
It's amazing.
Y'all ready? All right.
let me give a straight face on.
Your straight face? Do you have gay face?
Maybe I don't know.
Have you seen
my
his
non-laughing face?
I mean, you do have a pride tattoo. Like out of everybody at the table, you have the pride tattoo.
Out of everybody, that includes
a gay guy. Which
I'm also the only one with one piece tattoos.
That's
at the
true.
table.
That's true.
I'm
working on
Craig.
it.
Oh my gosh.
I'm working
Posers.
Next thing you know, he's going to have a Conan tattoo, and I'm going to be real sad.
Oh god.
And the Hulk.
I'll burn
I
this
am
fucking
gonna
place
do-
to the ground.
That's the tattoo.
And then he's going to get a Dune tattoo.
No, I'm going to get.
And
I'm going
Red
to get.
Sonja.
But it's going
Conan.
to say written by the guy that wrote.
Breathe.
Let's Red Sonja riding a sand
Hulk Pride or Conan?
No, I'm going to get Conan waving a pride flag. That's what I want.
We get Narni Conan.
Ooh, good one.
I think you should make the Republican wave a gay pride flag.
Jerry, what's your next Roman numeral?
He's
here
a
again?
very liberal.
I was going to say, to be fair, he's a California Republican, which is more like
throw it
a
out there.
Well, actually,
Southern Democrat.
Yeah.
So
This is number 4.
Yeah, he's a very liberal. I mean, he married a Kennedy. He can't be too.
exactly.
Smoked a lot of pot too.
It's California.
And steroids.
Yeah.
Smoked a lot of steroids. He did at least 2 steroids.
Yeah.
And injected a whole marijuana into the thing.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. We hope you enjoyed that little banner, which I'm totally leaving in the show.
Yes.
As we talk about California Republicans and Conan waving pride flags, which is awesome. As usual, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie, and this is episode 77, I believe, of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. Who's with me here today?
Matt Trogdon.
Jerry.
Craig Lance.
And Sean.
All right, how's everybody doing, man? Everybody have a good week?
I just want to ask if Jerry feels better about things since we went clockwise that time.
Oh, man. I mean, you still confuse me because I was waiting for Craig to go and then Sean to go.
We can't make you happy, Jerry. Okay, yes, I had a good week.
So
It's kind of like bottoming for the third time. It feels right, but there's still something off about it. Yeah, that's what it is.
But Jerry is the known power bottom of
He
the
is
group,
true.
though.
He is the power bottom of the group.
He can adapt to any situation he needs to
We love you, Jerry.
through experience and willpower.
I'm learning new things about myself today, apparently.
Craig is like social lubrication. So we all had good weeks. That's a thing we've established. We're enjoying our nice little Sunday brunch, as usual. And we're going to talk about some comics today. I'm excited about this. I love our comics episodes. They're lots of fun. So let's do some housekeeping first. If you enjoy what you have been hearing on this podcast, or if you are new for the first time, either way, and you have not swung by our Facebook group, what are you doing?
Can you be new for the second time?
I mean,
Is it like a virgin?
It's like bottoming for the third time. it's still new. But no. So swing by our Facebook page. Join our group. We have a fun time there. We're always talking about stuff. All of us post different things. People who are also listeners post different things. We have fun, man. It's a great place to find out about new comics, to find out about new just anything in geek culture. Really, really enjoying it. Here lately this past month, because it's Pride Month, I've been going through and every, once a day, spotlighting a different creator who is a member of the LGBTQ plus community. I'm having a lot of time, having a really good time doing that, because not only do I get to talk about people that I know and have read, and in some cases I'm friends with, in other cases I get to find new things, these new creators that I'm not aware of. and it sends me down those little internet rabbit holes, which is awesome.
Well, I appreciate you doing it because it's been fun reading the little blurbs about the creators. Some of them I didn't know were even LGBTQ.
Yeah.
And, some of them are, you read whether I read.
An epic shit ton.
Yeah, an epic shit ton. So I don't necessarily know nor care.
Look into every creator of everything.
So it's really neat to get that background information on some of them. So thank you for doing that.
Oh no, it's literally my pleasure. I'm having a blast doing it. I try to do these little things for if you have a different month for everything. So back in Black History Month, every day I would post a different African American creator, or not even necessarily an African American creator, just somebody of African descent.
I think Castro needs to step his game up.
Oh, is that
since he's peripherally part of the show? Start posting those things for us. I'm playing.
He's busy. He's got Snoopy tattoos to do.
He did do some Snoopy tattoos
in the most epic fashion.
The most metal tattoo you will ever see.
We are also on other forms of social media. We have a Instagram page where we are posting different things we're reading. Just because it's fun, we like to put up different panels, things that we find that we think are cool or noteworthy as we are reading our books for the week. And we're also on Twitter, where we like to tag creators and make ourselves look cool. So hopefully they'll share us. It's totally just me being, hey, look at me on Twitter. That's what it is. I want the creators.
I mean, isn't that what social media is about, anyways?
I thought that was
pretty much
their business model.
Yeah, that is. Hey, look at me. I'm special.
I say that, but Matt, because he's a rock star, decided to step in, and I think has got our most reshared tweet. Period. Since we've had a Twitter page, he was just like, "Hey, I can do this." Expert level.
he needs to get us in the comment section of that
assassination.
Yeah. You've been in it what now? Twice. You've had your questions accepted.
The last two. I was in the submit. Kyle Starks was doing submit questions for, and he would pick one of the assassins. So I've been in the last two. And I submitted for the third, but apparently I missed the window because he responded. Did you see that? Where he responded?
I did, yeah. That he wished that it would have made
he wished I got it early because he really liked it.
Yeah.
I almost went 3 for 3. My reputation is shot.
So are you and Kyle Starks besties now? Is that what this basically means?
I was going to show up at his house, yes.
You should. Take me.
I would just go
on the third visit.
You won't mind.
Just knock on his door. I've actually met him. I met
third
him in
wheel,
Chicago.
bro.
So I'm trying to postpone the inevitable a little bit. If you haven't noticed, I'm trying to draw this out, and so I want to actually get your guys' opinion on this. We're going to roundtable a book that we all got. We were hoping we were enjoyed, but I don't think any of us did. Unfortunately, Sean liked it.
We'll get to it.
Okay, cool. But what I want to know, do we want to dive right into the roundtable this week, or do we want to maybe start off on a high note, do our short stacks?
Let's do our short stacks, and we'll do the roundtable, and then we'll do the
awesome
books of the week. And
it's like a compliment sandwich, what they do in management. Good, bad, good.
Yes.
A compliment sandwich?
Y'all are familiar with the compliment sandwich?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you are unfamiliar. That's what you do in management. You're like, we really appreciate you showing up on time. Now, everything you do before you leave home sucks, but you leave on time as well. Yes. You're like, oh.
That's totally the opposite of my management approach, which is really just, could you not be shit? That's just the way I approach
things. Need to talk to your HR department.
This is why I spend a lot of time
synergy and learn words that don't really mean anything and start using them.
You got to think outside the box. You got to push the envelope.
I just rather put the people in the box.
Got to up the dynamic.
This is why we have you on the show.
Yes. Classic Coke.
I'm so glad I work for myself and I don't have to do these meetings anymore.
But you still hate your boss.
Oh, yeah. I despise my boss.
Well, all right, Matt. We'll start with you, buddy. Tell me what's on your short stack for the week.
Short stack. So I read Birthright, Image Comics book by Joshua Williamson and Andre Bresson. I read this. These were on loan from Craig. I liked these more than I thought I would. I went into it.
You read volume 1 and 2, right?
I did read volume 1 and 2, the trades. And of course, this is a, sword and sorcery fantasy story set in today's world, which I'm always, as a genre, I guess you could call that, when you put the barbarian type setting in the modern era, I don't like it. So I went into this somewhat skeptical, but I've read some of Joshua Williamson's stuff and I liked it. So this was a good story. It's multi-layered. There's a lot going on. And
It does the trope very well.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It was much better than I assumed it would be. It was very good. I read.
Wait till you get to about volume 4.
Yeah. I know it's highly regarded. I mean,
It's really good.
what I've heard is this is regarded as his best work.
It's
Birthright.
really good.
Yeah. I also read Assassination number 4. Of course, that's also Image Comics. Kyle Starks, Erica Henderson. This is just like the rest of the issues. It was great. It's funny. The dialogue is excellent. There's some hilarious bromance going on between a couple of characters, Tarkington and Dave, the killer.
Is that the one that you shared with the rub the cocaine in it? Was that from that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah. It's a great story. It's unfortunately, I believe it's wrapping up issue number 5.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to get the trade because I really enjoyed the issue we read.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So yeah, that one's trucking right along with just as strong as the rest of them. I read A Walk Through Hell number 11, the Aftershock book by Garth Ennis with pen and inks by Goran Sadutska or something like that. Of course, it's Garth
Mr.
Ennis.
Saduska, if you have an issue with the way he just pronounced your name, feel free to come on the show and fight us about it.
It's man, this story is heavy, man. It is psychological. It is a hammer.
Yep.
It's one of the more twisted things I've read by Garth Ennis in a long time. He's really going deep on this one with his imagination. I read Savage Sword of Conan number 6. Of course, this is Marvel. Meredith Fitch is the writer. Pen and inks by Luke Ross. This is a one and done issue. In and of itself, it's a pretty from start to finish, a standard barbarian, or Conan the Barbarian story, I should say. I really liked it. It was just a bare bones Conan the Barbarian story. Kills a lot of people in very gratifying ways. I love the sound effect where he shoves a sword through a guy's face and helmet. The sound effect was splunch.
It's a good
I
sound.
really wish I could set my ringtone as such.
The splunch.
I was like, oh my God, splunch. Awesome.
You need a text tone for every time, like we
Yeah.
send a message in our group.
Most excellent. That'd be an awesome text tone. Splunch. Awesome. So, I really dug that one. It's got some really great Conan moments in it. I thought Meredith Finch nailed him as a character. He's really easy for people to just write as just a standard barbarian story, but she nailed it. And then lastly, Farmhand number 9, Image Comics by Rob Guillory, colors by Taylor Wells. This is a great story. It's a horror story. It keeps getting weirder. The art is fantastic. I'm really interested to see where it goes because it really took a dramatic turn in this issue. So that is a book that I highly recommend, especially if you like a good horror book. So that's my 5.
Nice.
Very
Jerry,
good.
drop 5 on us, dude.
So this week I read Dial H number 3 by Sam Humphries, Joe Quinones, and was it? I can't read my own handwriting. Riss Dean. Yeah.
We're only going to mildly make fun of you.
Oh, yeah, Eris Dean, right?
I'm not sure. I'm not reading.
I mean, if
so.
you know, say it.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. It's DC still trying to find its legs, sort of, but I mean, they've been giving us new heroes every issue, and the art style has changed every issue, and I've completely been digging that.
Nice.
Little Bird number 4 came out this week. I know Caleb's really enjoying it. Was it Darcy Polgast, Ian Bertrand, and Matt Hollingsworth? They've been killing it on this series. And it's almost like at the end of every issue, I'm like, how can this proceed? Like, how are we going to move forward from here? Then Guardians of the Galaxy number 6, they wrapped up their first story arc this week. And we kind of have like our concreted in like who our Guardians are going to be. Also kind of interesting, a character from it is going to show up in Avengers apparently at some point, like in the future. So it's going to be really interesting. Hellboy and the BPRD, Beast of Vargu. Anybody get that or Vargu?
I didn't get it.
It was just a one shot, but it's been forever since I've read anything Hellboy. Of course, Mike Mignola's story, Duncan Fegretto on art, and the colors was Dave Stewart.
Sorry.
A lot of my books are actually Dave Stewart doing colors this week. Like
A lot of everybody's books are Dave Stewart.
Right?
Yeah, he's doing a lot of books.
It had two really neat short stories in it that were pretty great. Really enjoyed the art in both of those. And then my number 5, I'm gonna go with Tokyo Shinobi Squad, number 3. That series is it's still building up, but what they're doing is standard for manga, where they introduce characters, kind of introduce you to all the different abilities and stuff like that. And like this latest one gave us some pretty interesting characters and abilities.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. It's been, usually it's almost like top of my pile, like on the app, the Shonen Jump app, whenever I read my stuff. But those were my 5.
Very cool. Craig, drop a short stack on us, dude.
Yeah, so I read Excellence number 2 by Brandon Thomas, Emilio Lopez, and Carrie Randolph. It's an Image book. I spoke about the first one on the show. It was my book of the week one time. Mm-hmm. It's just continuing right along. Still just a fantastic book about magic in modern society, basically. Faithless number 3 by Boom Studios with Brian Azzarello and Maria Lovett. I heard you say, or saw where you said that it's a little bit of voyeurism into the gay world.
Right, but it's the right
But
kind.
I think it does it tastefully.
Yeah, it's the right kind.
Yeah. And this book just keeps getting better and better to me. So, Farmhand number 9, I'm not going to go too much into it because Matt already spoke about it. Mary Shelley, Monster Hunter number 3 by Aftershock with Olivia Quartero Briggs, Adam Glass, and Hayden Sherman. That book's just getting better and better to me. The way it ended, this last issue, is anybody else still on it?
No.
I am, yes. Yeah, I have not read it for the week.
Okay, yeah, wait till you get to the end of this book. In Skyward number 14, which was my getting ahead of ourselves last week, it paid off. I think it's the last book in the series, so it's certainly a series they can go back to anytime they want to.
Very cool.
It's that good of a series. An interesting thing I noticed about did I give the creators on Skyward? It's Joe Henderson, Lee Garbett, and Antonio Fabella, and it's an Image book.
Nice.
Interesting thing I noticed, and this was purely coincidental, but when I was typing this up this morning, out of the 5 books I read, 3 of them have black protagonist, 1 has a bisexual protagonist, and 1 is about an old school feminist that arguably changed the course of horror stories throughout time. So and that was just purely coincidental.
Yeah, nice. You're getting a good spread
Yeah.
of humanity. That's awesome.
Yeah. So just thought that was kind of a interesting little thing.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Sean, what you got for us this week, man?
Well, but none of your stories featured a rabbit samurai, which my first book is Usagi Ojimbo number 1 from IDW. Still written and drawn by Stan Sakai, but now added Tom Luth of Guru the Wanderer fame for the colors. And they just mesh so well. It's a fantastic new start to a new miniseries now under IDW instead of Dark Horse. Usagi.
Beautiful.
Number 2 would be Teen Titans number 31, written by Adam Glass, art by Bernard Chang. Crush meets her dad, Lobo, and it doesn't go well. Fantastic book.
I didn't realize Adam Glass was writing that for DC. That's awesome.
Yeah. Number 3 will be Rat Queens, number 16, with the brand new creative team now starting on this book. It was written by Ryan Ferrer and art by Priscilla Portraits. Good writing. The art fits. I'm really looking forward to this new team run.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Oh, you're still on it?
I'm still on it. I was pleasantly surprised. I was scared with the new creative team.
Yeah, I think it's a solid start, so I'm excited to see where they're going to go with the series. Number 4 would be Middle West, written by Scotty Young and art by Jorge Corona. Again, I'm loving this whole fucked up Wizard of Oz dealing with like domestic violence and this abusive parent issue and all that. Is still a phenomenal series. If you're not on it, you should get on that one. And number 5 would be Batman number 73. Written by Tom King with art by Mikhail Janin.
Janin. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just Janin. It's one of those names that looks like it should be
It
said
should be
with
a
an
soft
accent,
J, right?
But it's not. It's just
right.
Janin.
Well, Mr. Janin, if you have an issue with the way I just said your name, feel free to come on this show and please come on this show and fight us about it. Again, continuing the after effects of the horrible Nightmare arc that we're still getting a bit more of the repercussions of Batman, and I'm liking it. And anytime Miguel Janin is on it the entire time, I'm fucking happy with the book regardless. So big thumbs up.
Nice.
Awesome.
Good short stack, dude. So I guess it's my turn. I will start off. Let's see. The first book I really enjoyed was Jughead's Time Police. I'm not super familiar with the Archieverse, but I've been reading the horror stuff, so it's kind of an entryway into it. This one was more of a standard characterization of the Archie characters, but, Jughead does some silly stuff and has to go through time. It's written by Cena Grace, who is a writer that I've been a fan of for the different stuff that he's done. Drawn by Derek Charm, colors by Matt Herm. I enjoyed it. The second book on my list, there's a little bit of kismet here, was also, I think, your first book, Craig. It was Faithless, by Brian Azzarello and Maria Lovett.
It's just good.
It's good. So, like you said, when I first started reading that book, I was a little worried that it was just going to be, edgy for the sake of being edgy and some graphic voyeurism into lesbianism and gay sex. And it's a little bit that, but it's also a really good story. So there's a lot of stuff involved with it
what I like about it is, yes, it's voyeurism into that, but it wouldn't make a difference if it were straight sex the way it's written.
Right.
It's not that it's doing it for the sake of being gay sex.
Yeah,
it's just part of that
for the
story.
sake of being sex.
Yes.
Mixed a little bit of the old with the new. I finally got around to reading Descender, number 1, Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen.
Do you need to cry?
I need a hug after reading that first arc, man. It was great. Another kind of more current story that I really have been enjoying, and I'm liking it a lot, which is strange for me because Craig's going to reach across the table and slap me, but I'm not historically a huge Spider-Man fan. But I know, right? But Spider-Man Life Story number 4 came out this week. It's Chip Zdarsky and it's Mark Bagley, and it's a retelling of the Spider-Man story as if he ages in real time through the decades. And it's amazing. And
this is one that I'm going to pick up the trade on. I didn't get the individual.
I highly recommend you do it.
Why I didn't, I don't know, but I didn't.
One of those things a lot of people missed, I think. Yeah. And then last but certainly not least, I got around to reading Craig Thompson's Carnet de Voyage, which is a little bit of a travel narrative, a little bit of an introspective on the early 2000s, an American being in foreign lands. It's good. It's not for everyone, certainly not. And it's interesting because he doesn't really use a lot of panels. It's just, it's him traveling through Morocco and Paris. And this is just after 9/11, where he's doing these things. It's in 2004, I think. And it's right after Blankets came out. So it's fun. Very cool. I highly recommend it. Had a chance to meet him in Portland, and super cool guy. So
can I throw another one out there?
Sure.
Because I wasn't sure if one of you were going to get it. Gideon Falls 14.
Oh yeah, I
came
haven't
out this
yeah.
week. Yeah, it's like every new issue of this in the last 3 issues, we get more goddamn questions than we get answers.
I was going to say I read that issue, and at the end of it, I was thoroughly confused.
Yeah,
so they've got a lot of multiverse stuff going on right now. It's been.
I thought maybe I'd missed an issue or something. That's how confused I was.
It's very disjointed. It's very dejected. It's one of those,
you're supposed to feel if you were watching it in a movie or reading it in a trade form, it's exactly how they would want you to feel. But reading it on a monthly issue, it really was like, where do I need to go back and read the last issue?
I did feel like I needed to just to see how he ended up, in this area. Yeah. But wow.
Very, very cool. All right, so do we all feel good? Our spirits are lifted.
Everyone's time to crush your dreams
happy
and drive your
now the
enemies
plunge
before you.
All right. Well, let's not bury the lead. For our roundtable this week, we opted on going. We went with a book because number one, we knew it was going to make some waves. I'm actually a fan of 50% of the creative team. It's somebody who's a legend in the comics industry, and while there has been some hits and misses, he's somebody that I think I'll always pick up a thing with his name on it. The book is Superman Year One from DC Comics. It is written by Mr. Frank Miller. It is drawn by John Romita Jr. With inks by Danny Mickey, who I think might be the MVP of this book. Alex Sinclair did the colors, and letters by Mr. John Workman, who also
finding something positive.
Hey, I'm working.
50-50.
As an inker, I think he did a good job. But before we dig into just our thoughts on it and everything, I thought I'd give a little introduction, a synopsis, if you are okay with that.
Sure.
All right,
Absolutely.
cool. So our book opens with kind of a generic version of the Krypton explosion. Baby gets launched to Earth, gets found in a field, starts growing up, and the parents realize he's got abilities, and they start raising him with those good old Midwestern values. Frank's not, he's not changing anything about the origin story from that aspect, as far as what happened. Yeah, it's the Superman origin. It is what it is. After that, growth happens. So he kind of moves through life. Just that's all I put. Growth happens. That's like 3 pages of growth happening. A little later on, Clark starts high school because, bullies and life problems don't exist in middle school. They all start in high school. And, all adolescent issues start at the age of 12, apparently. So Clark begins to make friends like you do. So he finds, in pure Clark fashion, he finds the outcast, the downtrodden, the people who don't fit in with the in crowd. And, pretty good characterization.
That pause and grunt really sets the tone here.
I think that I believe that Frank Miller believes that kids are like this. I don't believe that the kids are like this, but I believe he believes they are. But he also makes friends with somebody who we should all be familiar with as readers of Superman, and watchers of maybe Smallville and stuff like that. Lana Lang. She is in this, and she's drawn very well, which earns him the unsolicited attention of a young bully named Markham. And
that is a positive. Lana Lang is drawn very well.
Yeah. Work with me here, guys. So yeah, we meet a bully named Markham. He's the leader of this little gang of ne'er-do-wells. And Clark's parents aren't the only ones who are starting to realize that Clark is special, that he has powers. His friends start to realize that he is kind of bigger and stronger than everyone else. And they all start leaning on him, or at least trying to figure out what's going on. There's this one little goth bastard who tries to stab him with a pen, and it doesn't work. Like, it just breaks the pen, and everybody's like, well, that was weird.
And it freaks him out.
It does. It scares him. He goes skittering off. Clark eventually steps...
As a typical goth kid would do.
Back to the shadows.
Where the mascara and the eyeliner
and My Chemical Romance.
Touching the dark.
Don't take My Chemical Romance.
Eventually, Clark, because Clark is always driven to do the right thing, he steps in to stop a fight between Markham. He's beating up on one of these kids, and although he is holding back, he still just does a lot of ass kicking. Like, he's very conscious that he can break these people, but he's making sure he doesn't hurt them.
He breaks the kid's arm with a block.
Right? Yeah, he just like bloop.
Yeah. And gets in trouble for it because that's what happens in school.
Well, but at least he didn't get suspended. He just got in-school suspension. The other guy got sent home. So, because Superman would never get suspended from school. And I actually thought that was funny.
Well, the fact that he was in trouble.
But honestly, you do hear about it happening now.
Yeah.
And granted, this is written like Superman in modern times.
If you're
in a fight, no matter if you're the right or wrong, you're in trouble too, because you shouldn't be fighting.
All he did was block it.
But that modern schooling, bro.
Yeah.
That is unfortunately, 100%.
Anyways, go ahead. Sorry. I keep
you're
derailing you.
So, his friends hope, the idea of going and stopping this fight is he is hoping that Markham and his little goon squad are going to get scared and that they'll just back the fuck off. It has the opposite effect. Markham and his buddies, they start escalating their assaults on the other kids. They won't touch Clark, but they start almost singling out, they're picking the weak from the herd, and they just start beating them up for no reason. They're just bullies. And no one will do anything about it. Like, the teachers are seeing this. The kids are obviously, they've got black eyes and stuff, but no one's going to stop it. Except for our little friend Lana, who has been taking pictures. She's almost like a little mini Lois Lane. And she wants to go to the cops with this evidence. But our old pal, the shitty goth kid, overhears Clark and Lana talking. And in what I assume, it's not explained in the story, but I assume it's a bid to get the bullies off of his own ass. He rats out Clark and Lana. He goes to the bullies and says, hey, they're gonna take this to the cops. You need to get these photographs. And they do. The boys show up to Lana's house and they trick her into coming outside. She actually thinks it's Clark, where, they try to rape her because it's fucking Frank Miller. That's obviously the answer if these things happen. If boys get punched, girls get raped, in Frank Miller's mind. Fortunately, Clark was on his way over and literally swoops in and busts some heads, then flies off with Lana, and we never see the bullies again. Time happens, I guess. Clark gets to kiss Lana and then walks home, stopping to pee in the bushes because he's a country boy, and that's totally not Frank Miller, just awkwardly setting up a situation for the readers to insinuate that he was going to go jack off in the bushes. Then Clark is really good at football for like a page. And
see, we hit this point, right, where Clark was going to pick up Lana from her house, And then after that scene, Caleb and I lost interest, and we just flipped through and started describing things that were on the pages.
I don't think you and I are the only people who lost interest. I think Frank Miller lost interest.
I'm about to say those actions were very fitting to the pacing of. We'll get into that.
And because he's good at football, he decides to join the Navy.
As you do.
and jumps on a bus to boot camp, waving goodbye to his family. There's this really heart-touching moment with him and his parents saying goodbye. His dad does this thing where, Martha is very sweet. She's like, well, you have to be a good boy and you can't do these things. Pa Kent's more like, well, look, listen to your mama, but for real, do the shit you need to do because you're a man. This kind of, we don't tell the women how the real the world is thing. Waves goodbye to Lana while she's sitting on a roof somewhere with a sign because she knows he has super hearing and, his secret identity doesn't fucking matter. And he busts it to boot camp. Yay! And that's where
she's holding a sign because he has super hearing.
Yeah. I got nothing.
It's not you. That was the way it was written.
No,
I thought that's
absolutely.
We should
very
have recorded this one at night so Caleb and I could have
right. And issue 2. This is going to be part of a 2-part series. This is one of those prestige.
Oh, thank God, there's only 2.
There's only 2. This is one of those oversized magazine format black label bullshit things that DC is doing because they think that it's going to save them, and it's not. But they're personal opinions. Anyway, so issue 2 is going to pick up with him in boot camp going to the Navy. So let's go around the table. Thumbs up, thumb down, yay, nay. Because I didn't enjoy this, but I don't want to take away. If anybody did enjoy this, I honestly want to let them have start us off because I don't we have a 50-50 rule. We're not here to drag anything through the mud. It is what it is. I think we bought this book. I bought this book because it's Frank Miller, and I still have hope that Frank Miller is a good writer. I love the things that Frank Miller has done in the past. He's a legend. So this was not one of those books. We did not buy this for the sole purpose of hating it. So, and somebody said that on our Facebook page, or at least my personal page, and was like, yeah, everybody just buys this to drag it through the mud. And that's not what we did. So I don't want anyone thinking that. Right. I'm not going to spend $8 fucking of my hard-earned money, or student loan money which is actually $200, to read some shit I didn't like. I had high hopes for this book. I didn't enjoy the story at all. I actually think this is a fucking egregious abomination of a comic, but sins were committed. But Matt,
it sucked.
Okay.
I applaud you for your effort in trying to do your 50-50 rule, but fuck that rule. This fucking book sucked. It was a chore to read this. I stopped probably 3 times. I'm like, I've got to finish this book because I'm going to have to talk about it and I have to have an informed opinion.
I thought you liked it so much because you bought a variant cover for it and everything.
I went into this with very high expectations. I did not hate buy this book. I was like, oh, sweet. Superman Year 1. Oh, we're finally going to get the Frank Miller Superman story. And 3 pages in, I was like, Christ, what have I done? The narration in this book didn't make any sense to me. This is like a third person perspective one moment, then it was an internal monologue the next, then it was maybe dad.
Hold on to that because there are things there that I want to jump in. There's deep dives. So, Jerry, yay, nay, otherwise. Nay.
Yeah. Positive outlook because I'm not obligated to get the second issue.
Yeah.
Please don't make it a round table.
We're not. Don't worry, buddy.
Yeah, it was an A for me. I got about halfway through the book and just kind of started skimming. Mm-hmm. I have so many problems with the characterization of Clark in this book. To me, it was like Frank Miller wanted to create Brightburn, but then wanted to... It's obviously somebody that, as I've said in the past, doesn't like Superman, but he's trying to prove to the world that he really does like Superman. And that's the way it comes across. You said that you like 50% of this creative team. I like this entire creative team 50% of the time.
Yeah. Maybe that's a more accurate depiction of what I meant.
Let me kind of elaborate on mine a little bit. The entire thing, I was waiting for the shoe to drop because I thought that this was some kind of ridiculous, simulation that they were putting Clark through or something like that. Uh-huh. Because everything seems sort of automated with how the parents were reacting and how, how is he going to react to the school stuff? And it's not. Mm-hmm. It really isn't.
Sean?
Didn't hate it as much as I expected when I picked it up before we even decided to be a roundtable book. Just trying to expand my reading list. And so I actually had that in my pile before we decided to be roundtable. But being Frank Miller, more 50% on him than I am on Romita Jr.'s art. I understand why people don't dig his art a lot of the times. I've kind of grown used to it. I read a lot of Kick-Ass back then. I think that's kind of helped. But yeah, I mean, there's pacing issues. There's definitely weird dialogue. Frank Millerisms, like you said, like women gotta be raped, boys gotta be punched. His idea of like Southern dialogue is fucking weird as
Offensive.
shit. Yeah. And, his repeat, this is not exclusive to this book. His repeat of words right after each other. Mm-hmm. I remember that first hit me in the Batman Spawn crossover from the 90s, but like, do you have when you write a book, do you have to have so many words per book and he has to fill it that way? I don't know. Surprisingly enough though, I did not hate the book. I actually really liked the school era of it. The way his really showing how shitty kids are. And this may be striking personal chords because my school days are not very positive. Mm-hmm. So that struck a chord, but yeah, pacing is horrible. I'm not super familiar with Superman, reading Superman individually. I'm used to him in the Justice League books is about the most I read Superman. So don't have a lot of backing and like years of thinking about Superman beforehand. Right. So would I recommend the book? No. Yeah. But I can't lie. Depending on how low my week is, I might pick up book 2.
Good for you.
I know, right?
Opinions.
I salute you.
I have one, and I shared it.
Yeah.
Don't look at me with those eyes.
Yeah, I
Those are doe eyes.
No.
On just trying to step back and be objective, and not just dealing with what I want to deal with this book, what it is by breaking it down to its parts. I don't know that Frank Miller, like, he needs to go outside sometime. Like,
I have a question. Why the fuck was this called Year One?
I have no, yeah.
Right.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so this was...
Fuck you.
This was year 0.
Matt,
This was 18 year.
Matt, tell us on the doll
18
where
year
the
0.
comic touched you.
God damn it.
Yes, and but that's a good point. Like, it's in the title, Superman Year One, and this had neither Superman nor 1 year. It's a setup book. It's trying to consolidate all of Smallville, into one story with a character who can't grow up to be Superman. Because
this kid does not grow up to
No.
be Superman.
Of any sort. And a lot of people were going, like, my buddy Dap texted me and was like, maybe other people are right. I don't think they are, but, it cracks me up. People are saying this might be the Superman from Dark Knight Returns, from Frank Miller's version of that. And I'm like, that's like Mr. Fantastic can't make that stretch.
Right.
Like, that's like, even that Superman.
Hey, we're in DC, so try to use DC characters.
Okay, the elongated man couldn't make that stretch.
God, you went with elongated man?
I did.
Plastic Man.
Clayface couldn't make that change. I did one.
At least that
Good
Superman
job.
still has a hidden identity. This kid doesn't get to keep his hidden identity. Like, everyone knows who this kid is at this point.
Nor does he care.
Yeah, he doesn't, and neither do Ma and Pa Kent. Like, they're all telling him, well, no, you don't go out of your ways to hurt people, and you should just kind of deal with the status quo.
And you should go play football.
Yeah, but they're also not doing anything to protect him. Also, if we're like there's so many tangents we could go. Ma and Pa Kent, who the fuck are these automatons?
Well, and how did they think that the world was going to be okay with 2 redheads raising a brunette and no one questioning that he's not legitimately their child?
Who put these gingers together? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
They weren't trying to hide anything. He was blatantly, as a kid, lifting heavy shit.
Well, I mean,
everyone.
how
Like,
about-
they dropped that whole thing.
Yeah, the first panel that I thought, is when
Page
he's eating
1, panel 1.
oatmeal. He's eating oatmeal and decides to light the kitchen on fire. What?
And how did that happen? Like,
Green oatmeal, by the way, too. Color choice on that. It was fucking weird.
And just Ma Kent's expression whenever Pa Kent just brings this baby home, like, there was no surprise or amazement. They're like, well, I guess we're keeping it.
oh no, she literally says, "Oh, thank heavens!" And this is the part
Yeah.
where, as a Southern man, like, I legitimately start to get offended because, look, this does not take place in the South. It takes place in Kansas. Number one, Kansas is not the South. It's just, it's the rural North. This sounds neither like Southerners nor like rural people.
Midwesterns, yeah.
This doesn't sound like rural country folk. I grew up in a rural era.
It's a hard word to say.
Yeah. So I grew up in these places, and I've gone to plenty of them. No one speaks like this. 0 human beings speak like this. And if this is his idea, like, look, Frank Miller lives in downtown, or at least lived in Manhattan. He's a New Yorker. If this is what he thinks that people from rural area, places that don't have 1.5 million people stuck in a building, he needs to go outside more. This is some, and look, I'm the first one to come out and start saying that, hey, some of the stereotypes of country folk are just flat out true. There is a lot of ignorance.
They're stereotypes for a reason.
Yeah, they're stereotypes for a reason, but this goes above and beyond that. Like, again, like the word I keep coming back to is fucking egregious.
Well, I really like that Superman, because it's really hard to tell who's narrating the book. So sometimes it's his space daddy.
Yeah, his dead space daddy.
Sometimes it's him. Sometimes I don't know who it is. But basically, at birth, this kid has the social awareness of a 30-year-old man.
Yeah.
And then he's got telepathy and basically manipulates Pa Kent into take me home and raise me.
Yeah.
That sucked.
Yeah. But it's like, where did these powers come from? He can use telepathy and tell Pa Kent and manipulate people to do what they want him.
That's called being a cute baby. That's how they all get you.
Well, yes, but
So I don't know. I think we should ask everybody what the worst thing about this. What's the worst thing about this?
I feel a new.
That's what I want to know. So, Caleb, what's the worst thing about this comic book to you?
The worst thing to me is how it is simultaneously trying to be an all ages story while also being an edgelord fantasy. And what I mean by that is you're giving a pretty, something like in better hands, like a Scotty Young, being written. If Scotty Young were to write this, the school scene, I think, would be a lot better. So it is trying to act like a little bit of an all ages tale in that sense of people are being bullies. But we also get one really good racial slur and an unexplainable, unnecessary, completely avoidable, totally nonsensical rape scene. So that's the worst thing about this.
So
to me.
Frank Miller writing is the worst part.
That's
Frank Miller.
There are plenty of Frank Miller books to where he does not yes, he mistreats women, but there are plenty of other Frank Miller books where at least if he's going to do this narratively, there's a pathway there. There is no pathway to any of this. That is the worst thing to me. I'm not settling on, it's just Frank Miller because I love Frank Miller. I have shit tons of Frank Miller on my bookshelf.
Same. Worst thing about the book.
Oh, definitely just the Southern dialogue. That's probably what most egregious thing. Just the way the introduction of Martha Kent, for sure. Like the weird her just talking to, I guess, the people working around the farm was terrible. That was probably the worst thing.
Yeah. Also, when did Mom and Pa Kent become plantation fucking people?
Right.
for me, it's what I was just talking about. The fact that he's self-aware with the social consciousness of a 30-year-old man at birth. It just makes no fucking sense what's going on.
Like, we don't need another Superman origin story, I feel like. And they didn't do anything to go above and beyond to change this in any great way. It was just
pointless.
Yeah.
It was fucking boring.
There's that too.
There's a lot wrong with this book, but it's fucking boring. Things can be, I didn't care for this or that, but it'd be exciting. It sucked. It was awful. I'm like, why am I continuing to read this? Oh yeah, because I've got a job to do. That's me,
Now say something nice.
Say something nice. It could have been longer.
That's what she said.
If it had been longer, I would have had to sit through more of it.
This was like 64 pages?
I'm not going to do that to myself and count them.
I think it's 64 pages, which is fine. Like I said, we've read longer stories. It's just like,
even when we're trying to say something positive,
it's really no. And this is one of those cases, and I texted you guys earlier. It's going to be hard for me.
Don't do that to yourself.
I have read comics I dislike. I have read comics that, and at the end of the day, my opinion about all art, good art, bad art, whether it's drawn by Picasso or your 3-year-old nephew with a crayon, all art has some intrinsic value. Even this has some intrinsic value. There are things that can be learned. There are things that can be gleaned from this. Most of it is what not to do, but there are things that you can look like. There are some depictions of Ramita's art that I think there are some panels in this which I think are wonderful. They're standard Ramita. It's nothing above and beyond. Like I said, Danny Mickey's inks. Danny Mickey makes me actually tolerate Ramita in a way that very few inkers or Ramita himself have ever led me to.
I agree.
I think he does a wonderful job. He embellishes the right places when he can. Now there's some scenes in there where you look and you know that he poured the inks on to just deal with it. Like there's one scene in his face where it reminded me of a black and white version of Crossed, because the kid who's trying to look like ominous and evil, like there's so much just black scratching on his face. He looks like one of the characters from Crossed. But there are things that you can pull from this to learn. But like in all of the comics that I've read, and we all have read a lot of comics in my entire lifetime, 20 something years of reading comics. This book contains perhaps the least things that you can take away of any comic that I have ever read. Well, and it's done by people, and I maybe would feel less offended, like seriously offended. I would feel less offended by this if it maybe had have been people who are new to the industry. Although if they were new to the industry, this book would have never gotten published. But because these are two people who are supposed to be masters of their craft, just a crime against comics. And really, whoever I didn't even look, but the editor of this book, whoever let this out.
Agreed.
They owe not only the readership of DC an apology, but they owe Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. an apology, because they should not have let this out to tarnish those two men's reputations for whatever amount that they still can be tarnished. Because we all know Frank Miller. I mean, we all read fucking Masterclass. We know Frank Miller is getting older. He's not in touch with the way comics are done anymore. He's not the Frank Miller of the 70s. He's not the Frank Miller of the 80s. And that's fine. He doesn't have to be. They just tarnished this man's reputation to a point that there is no coming back from. Not for me, not for a lot of people I talk about. They should be fired unceremoniously.
But, the art, I'm not a Romita Jr. fan, but the art didn't really bother me all that much. The colors, look nice. The quality of the work is fine. It's just the story itself is a problem. The overall, there's no reason to recommend this book. Why in the hell would anybody recommend this to anybody?
If I have a positive to say about it, I enjoyed Lana's character arc, with one exception, and that's when she, for some reason, went from saying, I don't even know him, he's not my friend, to all of a sudden, wanting to help him and be his friend, but with no explanation. But outside of that, I thought her character arc was fine. Overall, it's just, we've kind of beat it up. I've got no love lost for this book.
Did anybody watch Smallville?
Yeah.
So I didn't. So is this does this Lana feel like the Lana from Smallville?
It's been a long time since I watched it, but yeah, she's kind of like, this feels like a Lois in a small town.
Right.
To me, it felt like, I didn't even know she was an actual character in the comics, and when I was watching Smallville, I thought they made her up for the show because they couldn't bring in Lois right away.
Yeah, they may have. I don't.
No,
I don't
but I've since learned she has been, but she's
Betty Brant.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But it's basically that, and so she felt like she did in Smallville, which I'm sure they took. So I doubt Frank Miller read or watched Smallville, but yeah, took some notes from that, I guess.
Okay.
She's the Gwen Stacy without the tragic death.
Gotcha.
Yet. It's Frank Miller's story.
I like your Betty Brant reference. That makes a lot of sense. That tracks.
Right. Kind of the first real female interest in their life. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
do you have any positives, Jerry?
No, I think you guys pretty much positived it up enough. I can't think of anything to add.
Trying to polish a turd over here.
How do you really feel, Matt?
Alex Sinclair did a fine and dandy job on the colors. I thought his palette was appropriate.
Except for the green oatmeal, as Sean
said.
said.
And a blue lip on her.
Well, see, I tried. All right, so let's move on to more
let's
happy.
Talk about some good stuff.
And again, I think
we did. I want to reiterate what Caleb said. We try to be a very positive show, and this is a thing that we set out from the beginning to do: is be a positive show. we choose these books, the roundtable books, blindly. And we're not going to give you a fake review of a book just because we're going to try and be positive. We didn't pick this book with the intention of shitting on it. We didn't pick this book. Every one of us at some point in time has loved some work by these people. And for that reason, we picked this book. It also comes right on the heels of us talking about Dark Knight Returns.
It does, right?
Which was a great Frank Miller book. This just didn't hit it, and it wasn't a let's shit on Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. This was let's try to find the positive. There just wasn't any in there. So it was not, I just want to be clear. It's just not it wasn't an opportunity for us to shit on these two creators. Because that's not who any of us five sitting at this table are. None of us go out looking for books we want to hate.
Yeah.
And we choose these now the books our books of the week we choose on our own accord after we've read them. So it's easier to pick positive.
Yeah, and I do want to add on that note, Frank Miller has written some of my very favorite stories ever. Like my top 5 favorite stories. There's one, maybe 2 Frank Miller stories in there.
Yeah.
I love what the guy has done.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was so aggravated with this, is it was because I know what he can do.
I've got the entire collection of Sin City sitting on my shelf at home.
I have the omnibus.
Yeah, I read it once every couple of years. Born Again is probably my favorite Daredevil story of all time. Flat out, period. Just end of story. It's amazing. So it's not that. Now, I have less love for Junior, but that's just an aesthetic. Like, there's nothing against his art. Like, that,
I like
just
his
a
old
personal
art before pre-Kick-Ass.
Yeah, I think in many ways that he has tried to follow Frank Miller's style, and that's adopted more of what a Frank Miller looks like. And I think he's not necessarily a clone, but he's following in Frank Miller's footsteps, and I think that's fine. From an aesthetic point of view, it's not like I'd rather just look at Frank Miller's artwork of days of past. But that's like I said, it's.
Again, I just wanted to be clear that we weren't picking the book to shit on it. That's all. It's we try to be positive, but we're also going to give you our honest review of a book.
No, I think this might be. I hope this is the low spot in any SFG review, honestly, because I think this is the
It's
worst.
the first time we've ever had to give a completely negative review on it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'll read this again before I'll ever read Punch to Kill.
Okay.
You technically don't read.
I know, right?
So,
But at least Punch to Kill we found some positives about. And I don't know that we were really able to.
And again, Punch to Kill wasn't a book trying to take itself seriously,
Exactly.
and it wasn't done by masters of the craft. I think that's what. If there's,
I know you're holding it up. I know because of the
you
name
can't make
recognition, you hold it to a higher standard.
Yeah.
And so you have to judge it.
It's a
as it
letdown.
is.
Yeah. So let's move on. Let's
Time to go.
talk about some books that we all chose to read. It's books that we all have had a chance to look over, and I think we picked them because we liked them. And I maybe should have done this beforehand, but I think we led into it enough that if you haven't read this, you haven't read Superman Year One, that then you're not like you had time to turn it off. But these are books that have been published and put out at least in the last month and a half. They're newer-ish, but there's nothing that came out in the last week. So none of these are books that came out last Wednesday. So hopefully you had a little bit of time to read them. But if not, here's your spoiler warning. It's fine. Take your time. If we say a book that you haven't read that's on your stack and you know you're going to, but you don't want to listen to it, skip ahead. I've been doing really good because I'm Daddy's good boy about putting time markers in the show notes. So if you want to know where on the time marker we end and the next person starts, check the show notes. They're hopefully valuable. I hope you guys find it helpful. If there's anything that I'm not putting in the show notes, please let me know because I want to make it's a tool, right? I want to make you guys out there listening to this be able to utilize it. So let me know if I'm not doing something that I need to be doing.
we should put that before the roundtable. So we're like, if you want to skip our review of Superman Year One.
But so, yeah. I have my trusty list pulled up, but I was going to see who wants to kick us off. Jerry wants to kick
I'll go
us
first.
off.
I don't think I've ever gone first on
And
this.
you're first on my list,
Oh, so I read Gogor #2. It's actually I think Craig and I are really, really digging it. I mean, it's only the second issue, but I think we were digging it off the bat.
Yeah. Matt actually read the first 2 issues. He stepped away from the table for a second, but he's read the first 2 issues. He was saying he really liked it too.
It's an image series, and a cool thing about it, it is created, written, drawn, and colored by Ken Gehring. So he does all the work here. Short summary of the first issue. We meet our main character, Armano. He's a student of the School of Natural Arts in Arcadia. So Arcadia is really interesting, and I love how they built this world. It is essentially a huge ring of islands that are floating in the sky. So their main reason, like way of getting around and everything, they have to either have flying creatures or air balloons or something of that.
It reminds me of the islands from Avatar.
Yeah.
That are floating in the.
Yeah.
Except they're in a ring.
It's awesome. So Armano, on the opening scene, he's escaping from these people called the Domus, and he's on a flying shrew. He ends up getting away from them, running into a small character named Wexel. You find out that his island of Arcadia got attacked by the Domus because they're like trying to take over everywhere and control everything. He has a scroll. Him and Wexel make it out to this island that's on the scroll. They summon this mighty thing called Gogor in like the nick of time whenever these Domus show up, and that's pretty much where the second issue picks up. Gogor is summoned. He's this huge hulking creature that's like got all these plants and bugs and stuff crawling all over him. He's just apparently a force to be reckoned with because he makes short work of all these Domus, to where it's kind of comical because at the very end of it, he balls them all up and just heaves them away. At that point, Armano is, like, hey, come help me save Arcadia. And Gogor doesn't, like, he's looking off to a distant island and he kind of points at it. And, our little compatriot Wexel, points out, oh, that's, Bogwell Major. And, they're trying to do this, like, sort of quest adventure where they're waking up Gogor because Armano got this scroll from one of his mentors while it was being attacked. So he feels that Gogor is the resolution, the force that they need to take out the Domus. So they end up going to Bogwell Major. They take a hot air balloon. Wexel and his Armano's shrew kind of stays behind because Wexel points out that it's all just swampy marsh area and they would only slow him down. Gogor doesn't say much. He's kind of like that one word, kind of simpleton person, where he probably, has more in his head than what he can actually say. So he, pretty much all he points out is, he says, Hedron, right? And it doesn't give any kind of explanation or anything. So Armano's like, what is that? Is that a person? Is that a place? The time goes by. Armano's searching. He loses sight of Gogor and he just disappears. Giant monster goes to attack him. He's running from it. And, come to find out it's just something like in the swamp that just wanted to eat sap or whatever. And I guess it just got riled up because it saw him. It was interesting. So it's like, you kind of have this thing where, you have, something that you're expecting to happen, like, a giant monster chasing someone. It's like going to eat him or something like that. But it doesn't happen, and they do that in the first issue too. And I kind of like how he, you have, certain expectations after reading so many things. You're like, oh, this is so predictable, like.
Yeah, it subverts your expectation.
Yeah. And I kind of like how we're seeing more of that is it's like he meets this guy by a campfire that, I don't know, might have been spying on him or something like that. So you immediately think, oh, this guy's going to poison him or turn on him or something like that. And it doesn't happen. So I kind of like that to where it's like not predictable, in that sense. Armano ends up meeting these little bog people, who kind of like, well, come with us, you can get shelter and get food and then, carry on your journey.
Kind of reminded me of Dark Crystal or.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
go to her family, her guardian's place.
And these like little bog people, they have this giant like it's almost like how an anthill is shaped, where it's got little tunnels and stuff like that. He's chilling with them and eating and everything, and their elder comes and starts to tell the story of this thing called the Blotted Age and how their people used to thrive and everything, and then some dark force came and started taking over and destroying the swamp and building crops, and something happened to stop them, and some of their people were enslaved during this time, and They mentioned the Blotted Age before, and there's some kind of time frame in there that something really interesting, happened, but no one has any memory of it really. And it's kind of like, is that the reason why this place is split into islands, or, do these domas have anything to do with whatever, bad thing was, caused the Blotted Age? And then there's also that sense of like Gogor is, he had something to do with it, or like he was around that time, because there were stories of like, when darkness hits, then Gogor will come to save the day or whatever. They go back and show us what's going on in Arcadia at one point, and all the Damas have taken over. Their general flies in. And he's, got this huge red beard and a spiky helmet, and he's, basically asking for a progress report. And his little sergeant is, giving him the lowdown and telling him that one of the scholars got away with the scroll, I guess they were looking for, because it has great power. I don't think they knew what it did. And this whole time you've got this giant like serpent-like guy standing behind the captain, and he's just like, well, he's, got a better track record than you, so I'm going to send him after them. He won't fail us. And the captain, or the supervisor, I think is what they call him, is like, we sent a platoon of men after him, and I'm sure, they'll be back with him, at any moment. And at that point, like, you see the giant ball of soldiers just fly in and like land behind him. So it's kind of like this weird, like, comedic moment of like, okay, Gogor just like balled up these dudes and threw them in there. We cut back to the bog people in Armano. He asks them about, the Blotted Age and stuff like that. And they, mention like, well, why don't you go talk to this, sorceress, Tetrahedron? And then, the name strikes with them that's what Gogor was looking for. Next morning, wake up, Gogor's outside. The bog people take them to this giant crystal tower, and they get sucked up inside. There's this woman here who is the Hedron lady, and she basically tells them that questions and conundrums have been accumulated and answers must be assembled. In the meantime, yeah, I really liked that. In the meantime, you see this serpent person, Amphax. And it's just a kind of nice little like one page with a few panels that, how comics are done. Mm-hmm. And he's like, wow. He goes, you know how comics are,
how
right?
these
Sometimes comics, there's like
They usually
maybe
have
5
some
panels
panels.
or 6 panels or 8 panels, but never. So I don't know. It was kind of a neat little panel of him going out on this cliff's edge. He like blows onto a flute, and this fucking manta ray just kind of pulls up, and he jumps up in the air, and it like latches onto him. So it basically gives him wings, so he can like fly to whatever whoever he's going after. And the cover of the next issue is him and Gogor like fighting. So I'm pretty excited about that, but.
It's a fun book.
Yeah, it's really fun. I really like how they don't try to over-explain every single thing that's happening in the story. Like
They expect you to know what the world is.
Yeah, and that's really enjoyable. And it was really cool because if they ever want to explain something small in it, they actually put a backup story in this one. And Armano, the main character, I guess the students their final exam or whatever is making this thing called a multi-staff. And our little backup story is how he created this multi-staff and the process that they go
See,
through.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I really like that. It shows like all of the little devices that are hidden within it and stuff like that, and how they spring out and stuff like that.
And not only that, but if you're going to ask me to pay, I guess what, $3.99 or $4.99 for whatever this comic is, then put a little extra. If you're asking me to pay almost $5, $4 a comic, throw a little backstory in there. That's rad, dude.
Yeah.
That's what I love. Like Ahoy Comics does that too. And yeah, that's super cool, dude.
I will never not take that.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Fair Lady when they have a backup story at the end that's just prose, but yeah, it just adds to the world, you know.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Yeah, it's a good book.
That was my book. I really enjoyed it.
Right on. I'm gonna have to grab that because
I'm enjoying that series a whole bunch.
You said there's 2 issues out
so far.
So far,
And I think both of them were on the shelf, right?
Yep, I picked them up. Mm-hmm.
have to check that out. Well, who's next, guys? We'll keep going, Craig.
I'll go next.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about Walking Dead number 192.
Oh, shit.
I don't know that anybody else is still reading this book at this table besides me. Of course, it's published by Image. It's Robert Kirkman, Charlie Adler, Stefano Guadiano, and Russ Wooten. I mean, kind of, if you don't know the creative team on this book by this point, you haven't been paying attention to comics for the past 12 years or whatever.
I think this is the first time we've ever talked about Walking Dead on the show.
Probably.
Wow.
It's been a long time at least. I was on the book for like when we first started the show. I may have brought up an issue or two, but yeah, I dropped it.
I think it was, we talked about, in some of our early awards, it probably won some horror stuff, but, it's kind of fallen off. So, this book starts off, the first couple of pages recap what happened at the end of the last book, which was Sebastian Milton comes in, Rick's in his bed, Rick sits up. Sebastian Milton is the son of the former governor of the Commonwealth, which Rick has kind of inadvertently had to take over to save the people from this. He didn't want to do this, where normally he goes in and takes over, but this time he didn't want to, but kind of had to. And the guy comes in and he shoots Rick in the chest. And it ends on that cliffhanger. Is Rick dead or not? Mm-hmm. So it kind of just re-shows those last couple of pages at the beginning of this book. Then it shows Carl getting up and starting to enjoy his day. He had just come up to visit his dad from Alexandria. Hasn't even seen his dad yet and spent the night there. And he's going to go visit his dad in the morning and walks into his dad's room and there's zombie Rick. And Carl has to shoot his dad in the head.
No shit.
Yeah. Yep. So, Michonne seeks out Carl and tries to give him some sympathy the best she can and condolences. And Carl's just like, I didn't even think. I just saw a zombie and I shot him. It was my dad's body, but I didn't even think about it. So it kind of tells you where Carl, this kid that's had to grow up in this world versus people that grew up in the real world and then had to live in this world. The difference in growing up in it versus adapting to it. So, Pamela, the ex-governor, asks to speak to Carl and he goes in and he says, what do you want basically? And she's like, well, what do you want to do with Sebastian? She's like, it's my son. I love him dearly. And he's like, and Carl just says, well, what do you want? And she said, well, he'd committed this crime and he should be punished, but can we just put him in jail forever? And Carl says, yeah. I'm not going to kill him. Put him in prison. So he goes and he sees the guy, the Sebastian, in jail. And Sebastian starts, I'm so sorry, and and Carl just looks at him and says, if you think I'm going to feel sorry for you, you're fucking wrong. He's like, this is the best punishment I could give to you, was you're going to have to suffer for the rest of your life. It's the civilized way. It's the way my dad would want it. So that's what I'm going to do. But if you ever step foot out of this cell, I'm going to find you before anybody else does, and I'm going to fucking hurt you.
I love Carl.
And then he just walks off and leaves the guy sitting there in his misery. So Carl and Michonne load up Rick's body in the casket and put it in a wagon, and they're going to take it back to Alexandria, to Rick's town, where they're going to bury him. And Maggie comes out and she says, hold on a second. Some people want to go with us. They want to pay their respects to Rick in Alexandria. And Carl says, well, who? And she just looks, and Carl turns, and there's this beautiful double page spread. Hey, Wendy, behind, that's pretty much everybody in town is going to go, in the Commonwealth is going to go back and pay their respects. So they've got this big progression of people going. There's about 3 or 4 really good pages. It's no words, just people showing grief. something that Adler does really well in this book. And then they're on their way back, and Carl just kind of succumbs to the grief finally and falls off he's on the wagon with Michonne and just falls to the ground. And she stops the procession and jumps down, and he's like, I just don't think I can go on. So, and that's how it ends. So this book has had a lot of criticism over
The way I felt about Superman Year One.
this book's had a lot of criticism for the past probably 50 issues that it's just telling the same stories over and over. We went through the Governor, then we went through Negan, then we had the Whispers, which was something different, but then we went back to the Commonwealth, which is another town with a governor. That this one is not a bad person. She just wants to take the world back to what it used to be, which is classes, and if you're this, you don't have to work as hard as they do. You can just, she's trying to establish a class system, and Rick's like, that's not going to work in this world. And so, it's a little bit different, but it's really had some negativity about just repeating the same
Just kind
stuff.
of formulaic.
It's become, and actually that's the word I had in my notes, is that it's become very formulaic. What I hope this book is not doing is just a shock book to get people to shut up and, hey, look, I'll kill the main character. I hope that this is a really good chance for Carl to say, fuck y'all. I'm leaving. I'm going out into the wilderness. And at least you give us 40 or 50 issues of Carl trying to survive in the wilderness on his own and getting his life back together after losing his dad. And then you could have him go back and try and take over or whatever. I think they really have some opportunities to do some things and show some character development with Carl. And I hope it just doesn't stay status quo. It is really my concern.
Just do you feel like this book has got 40 or 50 issues left? I know we're always floating around the idea that and I think even Kirkman himself has made some comments that might allude to the fact that it might be coming to a close.
It could. It depends on what he does. I mean, he could end this at any point. Yeah. This could be the last story arc for all we know.
Right, which is funny because a lot of people start speculating that more and more, and possibly just because people losing interest in the book. But when Kirkman first pitched the idea and started it, he said he wanted to create a never-ending zombie story.
Right.
So I don't know if he has an end. I'm sure he knows his end, but like I said, it could end anytime because of sales and just maybe lack of interest. But I feel like now we're kind of hitting that midway point. Cause a lot of people who've read the books for a long time have said this is Carl's story almost more than Rick's.
I have certainly felt that way for the last 90 issues since All Out War.
Yeah. So
that's when I changed my opinion. It was like before All Out War and the Negan story, I thought it was Rick's story, or maybe Rick and Carl's story.
Right.
Once all of that happened with Carl, with Negan and everything, and then especially once the time skip happened right after All Out War, I was like, this is Carl's story. And I kind of knew it back then. But again, it's where they're going to go from here is going to determine whether this book has another 40 issues or not, or another 100 issues or another 200. You can't have this world where you have danger every time you step out of town, but there's really no danger other than the other people. The zombies are an afterthought in the book anymore.
Right.
They're not part of the story anymore. So make it dangerous again. Other than just other people. I mean, that's fine. That's what the story's about, is how evil people can be to each other. That's part of the story. But make it feel dangerous that, hey, you kind of have to learn to adapt to these people because of what's happening out in the world. So I think it's lost that edge.
That's interesting because we talk about in superhero comics how, especially in these long-term superhero comics, you have to make it feel dangerous even though it's never going to be. Superman's never going to actually die. Or comic book deaths are going to come back. This is actually a book that you can do that. This book has stakes. And we've learned that.
And he just proved it. He just killed the main character. I mean, the courage it takes as a writer to 192 issues into a comic to say, I'm going to kill the main character. That's some courage to either trust your fans that they're going to stay on board, or to trust yourself as a writer that you know what the rest of the story is. So it's a very courageous moment. Now, one other thing I wanted to say about this is Stefano Guidiano's last book on there as an inker. He came on during All Out War when they were doing the weekly issues because there was no way to do the pencils and the inks and get a weekly issue out. They loved his work so much he stayed on for the next 70-something issues. And he's leaving, and Charlie Adler's going. He wanted to leave. They didn't ask him to leave. Charlie Adler's going back to inking, so you're going to have that same feel that you've always had in the book. But
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought I'd point that out. That was in the letters section.
Nice.
So, yeah. So it was, like I said, a book we haven't talked about much in a long time, mainly because there hasn't been a lot going on that needed to be talked about in that book. Right. But I felt like with the death of the main character of the book that we should probably give it a mention. And it's Kirkman. It's well written, even when it's boring. It's still a well written book. And boring's not really the word. It's formulaic. It's the same thing happening over. You kind of this is going to be the next thing.
Now, do you follow the television show?
I did until they brought Negan in, and I just didn't care for. I think that Jeffrey Dean Morgan's a great actor. I didn't care for the portrayal of Morgan, and I didn't care for the way they handled the characters at that point, because I think they took, especially Rick, and took him way out of character. And that at that point, once Glenn's death happened and the threat to Carl, in the comic books, I believe that lasted one issue where Rick cowed down to Negan. They took an entire season of Rick being meek, for lack of a better term, and that's not Rick's character. He finds a way to overcome and to take down those threats. He's not going to live with that threat without some. It just wasn't portrayed very well on TV, and I got tired of it. And I will probably go back at some point and watch it, but I was fed up at that point. So
I don't follow the book. I have followed the show, specifically because the Hubs likes it a lot, and from at least even in the characterization in the show, not knowing anything from the characterization from the comics, I was just like, that's not Rick, dude. And it was such a bad portrayal of that character. I actually found myself kind of rooting for Negan, and he's supposed to be the bad.
Well, Negan's supposed to be the lovable bad guy, even though he's an asshole. You're not pulling for him at any point in the comics, but you kind of like, this guy's kind of,
charismatic.
Yeah, he's charismatic for sure. And you want him to get his comeuppance, but you kind of like the character, and so, it was just a bad portrayal right there. And the one thing that he did address in the afterthoughts in the book before the letter started is that he did not write this death because of Andrew Lincoln leaving the show. He wrote the death actually a long time ago, and in his mind, he knew it was coming. He didn't actually write it, and it was always going to be Sebastian that killed Rick from the moment that he introduced Sebastian to the comics. So he's known for a long time that Rick's death was coming in the comics. At least that's what he's saying.
Cool.
Whether that's true or not, we'll never know, but, anyways.
Shout out to Coral.
Yeah. Coral.
I wasn't going to let that opportunity pass.
Oh, good man.
Sean, buddy, friend, bearded one, tell me about a comic.
Well, hopefully the listeners will actually listen to my recommendations after saying I didn't hate Superman Year One. We're going to try this anyway. But what I do, my book of the week is a fantastic book called Sonata from Image Comics, written by David Hine and Brian Haberlin. Art is also by Brian Haberlin, colors by Gerard Van Dyke, and letters by Francis Takanaga. This is a science fiction story taking place on a planet called Perdita, with two races who are wanting to live there. They feel like this is going to be their promised land. This is a book I talked about last episode about my getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah. Actually, a couple episodes ago.
You put it on the menu.
I did. And it's like two races wanting to come colonize onto this planet. The peaceful Ran and the warlike Tyans. And as you can imagine, that's going to lead to conflict. The main character is a Ran named Sonata. She is a rider of a bird-like creature called thermosaurs. She's immediately very likable. You can tell she's a strong-willed, good female lead character. And like I said, I'm not getting into too much as a big, obviously, introductory issue into the planet that they're all going to be on and introductions to everything. But we get immediately, though, we get a glimpse into what this planet that they're moving to with this giant creature. Like almost immediately when they get into the planet, they see this huge hulking tree-like creature, and they call them sleeping gods. And nobody of the Rand, at least, know anything about them. So immediately we got some good mystery and intrigue, I think, into this book. We meet along, and I forgot to write down the native race of the planet. I've already started working with the Rand. Mm-hmm. And so you already get some interaction between them. They find out that the Therians have set up a base, and they kind of like, okay, we need to coexist. They're kind of hoarding. They dammed up a river, and they're like, hold on, we need to try and work some things out. Doesn't work out. Spoilers. Shit goes down, and it ends with Sonata actually making another discovery about this planet. Like I said, I don't want to get too much. I want you to read this book because it looks like it's going to be not only like a war story, but also discovery about this planet, its inhabitants, and like the race that was already there. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I can't recommend it enough. It is fantastic art, great characters, and my wife gave it probably the biggest compliment when she just saw the cover. Like, is that Fiona Staples?
Ooh, nice.
That's a good compliment.
I thought the same.
I would say it's like, and it's not a bad thing whatsoever. The art, I can't push the art enough. Haberlin is a fantastic artist, and the colors and inks and everything on it is fantastic. And yeah, I'm not calling it the next saga, but it's got that potential, I think, already as far as just a good space adventure, which I don't get into very much. Mm-hmm. But this one I'm highly excited about it for the next issue.
Kind of has those same vibes.
In a sense, without so much the family aspect, with Alana, Marco, and their baby and everything, but it's just that you got the two different races they look very similar. Like they even mentioned in the book, like if it weren't for our clothing, you couldn't tell us apart. Yeah. Because the races, while alien, are very human looking.
There's a metaphor for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But Joe, you read it too, right?
Yeah, and I really kind of like the premise. It's almost like this sort of Avatar-esque of like.
I'm really tired of y'all saying good stuff and comparing it to Avatar. That movie's bullshit.
But it's okay. It's kind of like that movie Pocahontas.
Yes, thank you. with less blue cat people.
So like the whole reason why both of these races are coming to this planet is because their own planets are, just kind of in destitute or whatever. Mm-hmm. They're running out of resources. So what they do is I can't remember the time frame, but every so often, whenever
it's every 5 years, their planet rotates
aligns with their planet. Their planet gets close enough with this planet to where they can send people down to the planet to live and everything. So they're slowly like sending their population down to just pretty much build up their
because they know they got with both races down there, they know there's potential for issue, and like they got secrets to them, and the other side's got secrets as well. So I think, like I said, this beginning issue is a good build up, a great start. I think it's going to be a really good series. So like I said, I highly recommend you go check it out if my recommendations mean anything anymore.
I reckon I really dug the artwork in it for sure.
You did pick it up? Mm-hmm. I didn't know if anyone else had picked it up.
It's on my read list. Unfortunately, we had some pretty bad storms in Arkansas, and while I was one of the lucky ones in the Little Rock area who did not lose power, it did knock out the internet in my whole little place.
He is literally a street over from me, and he kept power when we didn't have it.
Yeah. But our internet died, and it didn't come on until last night. And it wasn't anything with our system. It was just, I forget who we have as the internet server. But, anyway, I have it digitally. Like I bought it digitally. I just haven't been able to read it yet. So it's on my list of things I want to check out. Definitely.
I think you'll dig it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
I always like when you have a new book and the reason you're having to learn the world is because the characters are learning the world as well. It's an interesting way to do it instead of trying to force you into their existing world and trying to learn it. It's a fun way to do it.
Yeah, and they dive straight in with the what the fucks. Like they never seen the Sleeping Giants before. As much as they've already kind of established it, they hadn't seen one. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, like I said, at the very end, Sonata discovered something else that even surprised one of the, like I said, I forgot the name of the race, but like she has a friend with her who's a native to the planet. Mm-hmm. And even they're like, what the fuck did we find? So,
and yeah, as a narrative tool, it's interesting as a writer, or when you're reading these things and the way writing works, because you're walking a fine line, right? Like if you put in too much information, it feels like you're holding the hand and you don't understand conceptually what your own thing is. And so you're having to throw and see what sticks on the wall. On the other hand, if you don't put enough in there, then people are lost. It also feels like you don't know what you're writing and there's not enough context. Yeah. And so it sounds like, and like I said, I can't wait to read this, but it sounds like, that line is being walked well, which is always a plus side, especially in sci-fi. Which, and because with sci-fi, you're always dealing with, like I said before,
sci-fi and fantasy are the hardest because you're creating new worlds for people.
This feels more like a fantasy book.
Does it?
To me,
Okay.
as well.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like overtly like high technology and everything,
Right.
but there's obviously some futuristic stuff with spaceships and everything. But like the natives are very primitive, and like I said, she's not flying on a rocket sled or anything like that. She's literally flying like a bird-like pterodactyl creature. So yeah, it's got that nice mix in there.
Well, yeah, and what I was getting to was, like, with these two different genres, the thing you're inherently doing is telling a story that fits into our modern life, our everyday world, and you're using these things to contextualize concepts. Like in this one, you're dealing with two different races that both relatively look alike. And I'm sure there's going to be a metaphor for racism there, a metaphor for imperialism there, and so you're telling these very realistic stories, but you're putting them in a world that the setting and the surroundings are the things that we're not used to, while the characterizations and the tropes are things that we
Well, it's kind of a way to show that humanity is humanity, no matter where it's happening.
universal. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So awesome. Do we want to flip a coin? You want to arm wrestle? I'll lose.
Loser goes first.
You're at the master controls, man.
Well, I will let you go first. Then I will.
Outer Darkness #7 by Image Comics was my book of the week. John Layman, Afu Chan. This is a horror book with a sci-fi setting. There's a lot going on in this book, in this series. This issue #7 in particular starts off with obviously what is a flashback, of Captain Rigg. And he and a small team of crew members are running from some very gruesome alien creatures that are chasing them down. A couple of his crew members are violently dispatched with by the gruesome creatures.
as
you do
happen in this book.
As happens very often in the series.
Does this fit into the hierarchy of violence?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Alien death. Alien gruesome death violence. Pretty hot. So the hot violence death stuff happens. Get your attention. He, another crew member, and a female crew member close themselves off. They feel they're going to die at any minute. These things are going to get in there. He professes his love to the female crew member. She professes her love back, and then turns to the other crew member and goes, "And I also love you too." And then we flash to present day, and obviously Captain Rigg he's being mind controlled to a certain degree, and this illusion is being projected into his mind by the God engine. Aboard this spaceship called the Charon is a captive Sumerian deity. And that is how this ship is powered.
That's how all the ships are powered in this world,
because
with God engines.
They're powered with God engines because they're in the outer darkness, which essentially is the void of space.
Yeah.
The story takes place so deep in the void of space. This is where exorcised demons go. This is where ghosts and spirits go when things pass away.
Yeah.
So the level of threats in this world are innumerable. You have the terrestrial threats, you have aliens, you have other people that are threats, you have ghosts, you have demons, you have necro creatures.
Ghost houses.
You have, yes, which we're getting to. So he wraps up his conversation with the God engine, and his first mate, I guess you would say, is, why are you doing this? This thing is manipulating you. And he's like, well, how do you know I'm not manipulating it? This is pretty much the outlook that this captain has on everything. You read this series, you don't know if this guy's a good captain or not.
Yeah.
He's definitely an asshole.
He's definitely a captain.
He's a captain. He seems to excel at many things, and many things he does not. He doesn't even put effort out for several things. So you really have a hard time understanding really if you should be rooting for the guy and what his motivations are. They have intercepted another space vehicle, supposedly human power, human captain, but it's been issuing a SOS signal. Well, they're getting ready to, provide aid, and they see the apparition of a 18th century French mansion floating nearby. Flash to the explanation of this. back in the 1600s, there was apparently a famous hanging tree that was used for, looks like about 150 years. And apparently they would hang people on this tree, but then leave the bodies to rot on it. So all the blood, the gore, the bones, not only were hanging in the tree for however long, but then they'd settle into the soil, and essentially that poisoned the earth and the tree itself and basically turned the tree to an evil tree. French family moves on, buys the property, cuts the tree down, uses that tree to frame their new house. That is a cheap dad at work there. Because that is a poor decision. That is a common sense woman would have said, no, you're not doing that. We're going to buy lumber instead. I can identify.
But in the 16th century, they probably did that a lot.
Yeah, used gruesome, method
hanging trees
to frame houses.
Maybe didn't know that.
Yeah. Hey,
he just moved there.
Yeah, I guess ignorance
It
is
worked
a
really
defense
well
mechanism.
for him, though.
Yeah. So, after building this house, the flashback continues to explain that the generations that lived in the house showed a regular and consistent pattern of violent, gruesome, and just plain weird behavior.
I think that the dad killed everybody in the family.
It starts off with the guy who built the house killed his family with an axe. Then it shows, a lonely widow living in the house. She was quiet, but apparently she was sacrificing animals to Satan in it. Another family member a generation later was found to be killing and skinning prostitutes in the house.
Yeah.
These are the kind of things that happened in said home.
Yeah.
Flash to World War II, and a nun is leading a group of U.S. soldiers to the house because they believe some Nazis are holed up in there. And she says, evil follows evil. They enter the house. As the soldiers move upstairs to fight the Nazis, the house comes alive and eats the nun. And the house is burnt down as a result of the raid. After it burns down, a priest exorcises the area. And that is how the apparition of the house has come to be in space, because when demons
1,000 years later,
when things are exorcised, they got to go somewhere. They go into the void. So first, on board the Charon, this ship, are a team of exorcists. One of the several weird things that they have to keep on board, because again, mathematicians and exorcists and oracles, they send their chief exorcist in to actually kill this demon. But in doing so, he intercepts this nun who's been floating in suspension basically for all these years. And the issue ends where they are bringing her on board.
Nothing bad will happen on that.
Yeah. So this, whenever I'm talking about books, I always like to sum up like, why does this series earn your money? So this series earns your money. It's got a very interesting and vast array of characters. They've all got their own motivations. None of them seem to be good people. These are like, oh, this guy's not as bad as that one type people. And it gives you the impression that the only people they can find to go in these extremely dangerous outer darkness missions are people that are forced to, essentially, because they've committed some crime, or they're losers. They're not there because they're the most competent and frankly good people. The story itself is very inventive. It's very creative. It's unpredictable. Every issue you pick up, there's no way you can predict where it's going to go. And this issue illustrates that greatly. Floating ghost house in the middle of the void.
I never saw it coming.
It's literal. I really look forward to every one of these, because what is he going to come up with next is what you think when you're reading this. Captain Rig, the main character, his motivation for doing this is unclear, but you're led to believe he's going into the outer darkness because he's looking for essentially maybe the soul of his lost love. Because, when you die, if you're on a mission and you die a gruesome death, they're already in the void. Well, if the ship and the crew react fast enough, they can recapture your soul, give you a brand new body, and you're reanimated.
Yeah, and there's people that are under contract that if they find them, no matter how many years later, they have to reanimate them.
Yeah.
if you've got a contract with the corporation, or that's what they called it, right? Contract or insurance.
Contract or insured.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, of course, there's one guy on the ship who's been, I guess you would say, reborn 7 times. And, it's kind of like when a police officer shoots a suspect. He has to go to the police therapist and make sure he's handling it okay. Well, you have to do that when you're reborn.
Yes.
Talking to this guy that's done this 7 times, he's like, oh, I've done this 7 times. I'm a pro. Yeah, this is nothing. He goes, dying sucks. Coming back's easy. Then he goes back to his room and it shows him cutting diagrams into his skin with this evil grin on his face. So
it's John Layman at his best. It really is.
If you're into horror, gruesomeness, an unpredictable story, this is a great one. But it's presented in a very bright, cartoony fashion, much like he did with Chew.
Yeah.
A lot of heavy lines, bright colors. So it doesn't, it lightens the mood and makes it entertaining in and of itself. So I highly recommend this one. Again, it's a creator-owned book, so I always recommend people pick up creator-owned books anyway.
I second that. It's a wonderful book.
Do you think we're going to get a Space Ghost chicken?
Quite possibly.
I don't see how the only reason we wouldn't is because he wouldn't want to do something he's already done. That's
but I would love to see Polio out there.
John Layman, I think he's not going to pull that out of the Chew universe. I don't see that happening at all.
No, but it would be amazing. It would. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good. I love it.
It's excellent.
It's actually the book I was going to talk about till you said you were talking about it. And that's why I actually sent Matt a text, and I'm like, what book are you talking about? Because otherwise we're going to both have the same book.
I'm going to have to pick this up and trade, I think. It's
good.
Not something I jumped on. I should have.
Good.
It's one of those things I feel like I'm sitting here kicking myself under the table like, you idiot. What are you doing? Why aren't you reading this? So, which makes me sad.
Yeah, it's almost unfortunate. As much as I love Farmhand, I would love to see Rob Guillory.
Yeah.
Illustrating this?
Illustrating this, yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And not that the illustration's bad. The art's perfect in this book. But to see, I just love those two as a team.
Same.
Well, we started off at DC, so I'm going to bring us back to DC. Bringing us back to some superheroes, if you're okay with that, and we'll placate me with this. And it's a book I really liked. And so after getting a bad taste in my mouth with one of the Trinity, I decided to go with another member of the Trinity that I've really been enjoying, and surprisingly so. And the book I want to tell you about this week is Wonder Woman number 72. It is written by G. Willow Wilson. It is penciled by Jesus Marino and Tom Derenick, with inks by Jesus Marino and Scott Hanna, colors by Romulo Ferraro Jr., letters by Pat Brousseau, and a gorgeous, beautiful cover by Mr. Terry and Miss Rachel Dodson. And I always enjoy seeing that pairing on covers. They do great work. So is anybody else reading Wonder Woman?
I'm glad you're talking about it because I haven't been. I've been buying it, but because my stack's been so thick, it's been one that I have been skipping because Wonder Woman's just not always I love Wonder Woman the character. I don't always love to read Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And so I've been kind of skipping it. So I've been waiting for somebody to tell me, hey, you need to be reading this. So I'm really interested to see what your take on it is.
So I've really been enjoying this book. And it's one that, so I don't classically read Wonder Woman. I've got the George Perez omnibus that I think actually you bought me, because it's George Perez. But Wonder Woman books are hard. They're hit and miss, especially when you've had such greats like George Perez or Phil Jimenez on them. You never know what you're going to get. But when G. Willow Wilson jumped over to DC, and I really enjoyed her Miss Marvel book. She's an incredibly talented writer. I thought, well, let me see how she's going to handle this character. It's a good spot for her. And so I was sitting around Kapow, as I do on Sundays, and I had a chance to jump on to a few, read a few of the books, and I really, really dug what I read. So I added it to my pull list. So a little backstory to where we're at right now. This is part 4 of G. Willow Wilson's Love is a Battlefield arc. The big mystery going on in the Wonder Woman book right now is the Olympian gods, the Greek gods that hang out on Mount Olympus. They're kind of stuck on Earth. They're stuck in our realm, and no one really knows how or why. At the same time, Themyscira seems to be missing. No one knows how or why. But you've got these members of the Pantheon that should not be here, and Diana's home, who should be here, is gone. And more recently, Diana had to come to this kind of small town where Aphrodite and Atlantides, I think I said that right, the goddess of one of the goddesses of love, unions, lust, and more importantly, the embodiment of like non-binary or dual gender orientation. She kind of represents both the male and the female. They're both in this town, and it's causing some issues. Like the townspeople don't like they're split. There's two goddesses of love here. Atlantides wants to be worshipped, and she's kind of taken away free will from the town. And she's not a bad person. It's just kind of she's a god. She's a goddess. She's just kind of doing what it is that she thinks that she's supposed to be doing, and it's caused some trouble. And the townsfolk have got their orientation back. Like they've finally been able to, they woke up. They realize what's going on, and they are not happy about having their free will taken away from them. So you get this whole like pitchforks and torches, movement towards her. Diana has to step in, right? Like she has to sort this whole thing out without letting the gods destroy the people, and also the people attack the gods. It's a mess. She handles it fairly well. She's good at these things. It's part of her wheelhouse. So while Diana is sorting things out with Atlantides, her new friend Maggie, this young waitress that she's kind of been taken under her wing, so to speak. She's a really cool little African American woman, just really sweet, really smart, just doing her thing. Maggie ends up going through what they call a goddess door. And it's inside Atlantides' house, like this shrine that's been set up. And it's also how Athena remembers coming over to this realm. She doesn't remember what happened, but she remembers coming through the goddess door. And so Diana's like, wait, why didn't you bother telling me about it? Like, you might have wanted to mention this. This seems like it might be a big deal. Like, okay. And they were like, well, hey, they set up the shrine. I didn't do it. I'm just here. So Diana has to follow Maggie. And also one of the things you need to know is, while they're looking for the answers to this, Maggie has been carrying around the sword of Antiope. And the thing about this sword is it starts to glow. It historically starts to glow whenever it's near its owner. So if they get near Antiope, it'll start to do stuff. Antiope's missing along with the Athenians. So it's kind of this narrative element. It's a clue, if you will. The portal ends up taking them to this seemingly like barren version of Mount Olympus. It's where they suddenly have to fight a Minotaur. And so that's kind of where you're at, where this issue picks up. You start off kind of in media res. Diana and Maggie are facing off against this giant creature. It's not going well at all. Not nearly as much as Diana would like, which kind of tells you the power level of this great bronze Minotaur. She's having a really hard time holding her own. And she actually gets knocked down at one point, which I was like, damn, she just like got knocked down. This wasn't a simple just like blue plop. It was like, no, she got the shit punched out of her. It was in this really violent action. And Maggie steps in to block a blow. And of course you're like, no, Maggie, no, girl, like Minotaur, don't, like you're going to get squished.
If Diana's getting knocked down.
But that's also
and
part of her.
Popped.
That's right. Did you enjoy those sound effects?
Yes.
But she lifts Antiope's sword and it reacts. Like it just goes ballistic. It actually, when it comes in contact with the Minotaur, it blows him back. Like there's this explosion, this really violent reaction. And it sends him flying. And that's when Diana kind of has to explain to Maggie that the sword is reacting because Antiope must be nearby. And then right about then, Atlantides comes through the portal, because what she has realized is it's starting to close from the other side, and she wants to come rescue Diana and rescue Maggie before they get lost in whatever this void is. But because of the fight with this giant Minotaur, the ground is unstable. Like there's rifts everywhere, and it actually starts crumbling. Maggie falls into this rift, and Diana has to jump down to save her. And remember, in this inception, Diana can fly. She doesn't need her invisible plane. This is kind of the new idea of Diana for those of you who may only know her from like the cartoons or from the olden books. But when she catches her, Maggie drops the sword, Antiope's sword, in the process. Atlantides dives in to save the day. And she grabs it just in the nick of time. Like it's probably going to shatter when it hits the ground. Something's going to happen. She gets to it, but she actually wakes up this little horde of like weird looking aquatic cave gremlins because of course, out of nowhere, it was very much like, oh, okay. They look kind of like the mutated Atlanteans from the Aquaman movie. And they fight the gremlins for a little bit. They do their thing. Diana actually ends up using the lasso of truth, and what I kind of feel like is a very uncharacteristic move. I took a little bit of issue with that. But she starts spinning around herself, and she uses it essentially like a lawnmower blade, and she just cuts all these creatures in half. She eviscerates them. There are blood, guts, and gore everywhere.
It's a new power. I've not seen
she just
One way to use the
disembowels them.
lasso.
So, as you might imagine, at this point, the fight is over. Because
how is lasso death rate on you?
Sounds pretty sweet.
visually, it's pretty great. I don't think it's something Diana would do.
Actually, it would be non-humanoids.
Yeah, but she doesn't know whether or not they're sentient or not. That was the only thing. She didn't take time
Diana's
to learn.
out of the Trinity is the one most likely to kill.
Yeah, that's true. Sure. That's fair.
Warrior.
Yeah.
So the sword starts glowing again, and it shines a beam of light for them to follow, like through the darkness, and it leads them out of the cave into the open. And then Diana suddenly knows where they are, and she's not happy about it. Now I'm not going to tell you where they are because that's going to be the start of the next arc, and I think you should jump on this.
So the next arc, the next book is the start of a new arc.
It is. It's a jumping on point, which is why I kind of thought this was the right time to talk about this book, because it is a place where you can, you can know a little bit about. They're going to put a blip in the front of the book, and it's a good place to catch on. But really and truly, I think you can go to most comic shops and you can find the last 4 issues. This Love is a Battlefield arc, and I think you'll really enjoy it. It's been really comical, really fun. G. Willow Wilson has a great voice for Diana, and maybe even a better one than what I was expecting. Like I said, I saw with the lasso chopper truth, where she just takes this whole little horde of things out. I thought that was a little bit out of character, but it might not be. Again, I'm used to the George Perez version. It's fun, man. It's fun. It's lighthearted. It's modern. Someone like me who also likes to see Diana as a form of LGBTQ representation. You're getting this, in both from Diana and from Atlantides, you're getting this kind of conception of playing with gender and playing with sexuality. Diana straight up lets Atlantides know, if I wasn't in love with Steve Trevor, even though we're not together, but my heart belongs to him, I'd throw you down on the ground and we'd just do it, right here. And that was all. I was like, you go, girl. You tell her what you're going to do.
I get behind that.
Yeah, right. So would she. But no, it's a fun story.
Well, it sounds like she's diving a little bit into mythology too, which is something that if you're going to write a good Wonder Woman book, you have to be willing to do, in my opinion. And so to me, that interests me. Well, she's the mythology behind it.
She's pulling deep cuts, right? Yeah. She's not just talking about Athena, and she's not just talking about these kind of standard people. I had to Google Atlantides. So I was like, I know this is a person, and apparently there's 3 children of Aphrodite that are different goddesses or gods of love, and she's one of them. But that's a deep pull,
you should
right?
do your family tree because you'll learn all those things.
Because I'm a Greek god?
Everybody is.
Okay. We all are. But no, dude, I had a lot of fun with this. I think it's worth the read. If you're looking for a new DC book, you want some superhero action, you're looking for a book with a female lead, maybe you just want something that's not your normal, just rough and tumble thing. This is a good place to go. I've dug it a lot.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Well, all right. We ready to kind of set up the menu for next week?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Well, I think I'm going to go first on this one since I waited for last and I'm used to talking now. I want to tell you all to pick up a book. It's called At the End of Your Tether, number 1. It's called Another Place, Another Time, subtitled. And it's by Lionforge. And the reason I'm picking this book is, number 1, the cover art looks really great. It's got this old school phone receiver with the characters kind of wisping out of it. And there's a motorcycle involved. Y'all know I love motorcycles. But also the other reason I'm talking about this book is because it's written by Adam Smith, who is actually a local guy.
Nice.
Yeah, it's he actually used to work up at Kapow years ago, so he's from here in Central Arkansas. So it's good to see him getting some attention from Lionforge, which I think is a great publisher. With art by VV Glass. It's coming out this Wednesday, like all new comic books are. Just the quick and dirty of the book. This character is the main character is coming home, and he's nervous because he's going to run into his ex. As you might be, you're going back to your hometown. You've got some history here. You're going to see somebody who used to be a love interest, and you're like, okay. But he's a decent dude. He calls and gives her a heads up so they don't just run into each other at the corner market and things are awkward. And she's like, yeah, cool. We'll get together. We'll do this. But when he gets to town, he finds out the ex has been missing for a week. So it's a little bit of a mystery story. So I'm excited about checking it out. You want to go next?
Yeah. So what's on the menu for me next? Yeah.
Matt's like love stories. Nah.
Where's the violence?
The love
There's no
interest-
sex in my violence.
Love interest is missing. Perfect.
There's no sex in my violence. There's no sex in my
Right.
violence.
So what's on the menu for me next week is Wolverine Exit Wounds. This is written by Chris Claremont and Larry Hama.
I'm ready.
Yeah. So art by Sam Keith. Chris Claremont is the reason we have Wolverine today, and has written, all the stories that increased his popularity through the years. There's a big part of my childhood reading Chris Claremont's writing, so I'm really looking forward to see what he does revisiting this.
If you were into the X-Men in the 80s or 90s, you were in it because of Chris Claremont.
Yep. So, enough said.
Yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to jump in there, but Chris Claremont excites me.
Right.
The book that I'm looking for the most, and I've actually been looking forward to this one for I don't know, I think it's been 2 or 3 months since it's come out last. Weatherman Volume 2, Number 1, by Jody Leap, Nathan Fox, and Andrew Robinson. Where it left off last issue was really wacky. You've got this character named Nathan Bright that started off as this really sunny disposition type of weatherman who's super popular and famous. You find out that he is really Nathan Bright, who did a terrorist attack on Earth and killed 18 billion people, and then pretty much injected himself, erased his memory, and gave himself this new persona. Well, people started finding out about it. It went public, and he was chased down and hunted and tortured. And he got saved, and now, he's going to be retracing his steps, looking for answers of why this all happened. And it's the art has been gorgeous in it since the beginning.
It is.
It's been fantastic.
Can't wait to see what you think of the end of it.
What's up?
Can't wait to see what you think of the end of it.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Book I'm looking forward to next week is Batman Damned number 3. If you remember our year-end special that we did, my artist of the year was Lee Bermejo. And because simply just, even if you don't care for the dark, grim story that they're doing, his art is worth the purchase alone of this book series. And I'm sad I passed on the Bat Dick number 1. I'm still trying to track it down for a decent price. But yeah, the conclusion to the series is coming on there. And yeah, I mean, I said, beautiful
Some of
book.
that
Well
Black
written.
label bullshit is.
Yeah, more of that Black Label bullshit.
You
everyone
can't put a
hating on.
price on Bat Dong.
Yep.
I actually like some of the Black label stuff. I'm not willing to write off the entire line because of some bad shit.
Only took them 8 months to make out 3 issues. Good
I'm
job,
about to
guys.
say, yeah.
That was all an editorial.
Oh, I
thing,
know.
Yeah.
I know. They didn't have a plan. So.
What you got, Craig?
I don't want to talk anymore. You can just end it. Ascender number 3 by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Wynn. If you liked Descender, you're going to love Ascender. I actually think I'm liking Ascender better than I liked Descender.
Same.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting concept. I'm loving the world building that they're doing of re-inviting us back into this world.
Yeah, and it feels like it's been a lot longer than the 10 years or whatever that it's been. Like, in this world, it feels like it's been centuries, but it's only been 10 years. Yeah. That's how quick they lost stuff because of losing technology. So
it's been fantastic.
Read the first issue or the first arc of Descender this morning, and goddamn, I can that's big doings. If that's saying a lot. Well, ready to bring this thing home?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, we hope all of you out there have enjoyed hanging out with us for a little bit, talking some funny books. I certainly have. I always enjoy getting together with my brothers in comicdom, so to speak. If you like what you heard, come hang out with us on our Facebook page. Come swing by and check out our Twitter pages and or our Instagram pages. We're at SFG Podcast on both of those. We would really appreciate you doing us the favor, the honor, if you will, of going to iTunes or wherever you download your podcast and rate and review us. Let us know how we're doing. If you think we deserve 5 stars, throw 5 stars. If you think we deserve less, do what you feel. That's kind of how we judge our...
Only give us a 5-star rating or go away.
Right. That's kind of how we judge ourselves. It also helps the algorithms spread us around so more people can find us. And we would like to be found. I like being found. It's always fun. Come back next week. We're going to talk about some more stuff. We're going to roundtable another book, and we're going to have some listener questions from you guys, from the people who listen to the show who have sent them to us, and that's always fun. It's always fun to get those questions. So if we have nothing further, be kind to each other and go forth and love some comics. Woo!